All right, so the next manifestation of winner takes all politics is the absence of an independent council of state, and the fact that the president controls the council of state, and also its advice to the president does not get binding on the president. I mean, it's a manifestation of a winner takes all politics. How? It's like the president wins an election, takes over parliament, takes over other arms of institutions of state, and then he gets to the level of the council of state. That serious countervailing body that is supposed to check the exercise of the executive power. And the president goes there and then to take over that council to how? Okay, so let's see what used to happen or what happens in a traditional governance system. You see, in a traditional governance system, the chief, who is always installed, oftentimes is young. And before the chief was born, members of the Council of Elders were already operating in this palace. The Council of Elders are the respective family and clan heads of the various families and clans in the community. They owe their membership and office in the chief's palace as of right. Before the chief was born, they were already working in the chief's palace. And they provided their laps upon which the chiefs sat to govern, and they oftentimes advised the chief as to the young chief who may be inexperienced as to how to administer the traditional locality. Indeed, one of the main reasons why a chief got distilled in a traditional political setting was his failure to listen to the wise counsel of the Council of Elders. Because you are a young chief and you don't know anything about the traditional governance system, and so you must always sit on their laps and then listen to wise counsel. In fact, that's the reason why many chiefs in the traditional political administrative system succeeded, was that even though they were young, they sat on the laps of these Council of Elders, and then they listened to them, and then the advice of these Council of Elders shaped them. So take note of this. The advice of the members of the Council of Elders was always binding on the chiefs. He had no choice than to listen and to comply with the advice. Number two, no chief had a hand in selecting members of his Council of Elders. So if a chief is misbehaving, the Council of Elders can look into his face and say, Nana Obetoye, chief, you came to meet us. Because long before the chief was born, these Council of Elders were their respective clan or family heads, and they were already operating in the chief's palace. And so you could not disregard their wise counsel, and no chief also had a hand in selecting members of his Council of Elders. But we borrowed this idea, I think, into our previous constitutions, and then even in the 1992 constitution, we watered it down the more. And so we introduced the traditional conception of the Council of Elders, and then we had a Council of State. But see what we have done. We have a Council of State whose membership the president determines. So the president has overwhelming influence in determining who becomes a member of the Council of State. He appoints some directly, members directly, and then some members he indirectly appoints, and he can influence even members coming from the members coming to serve on the Council of State from various regions. And I will urge my teaching assistants to review some of these, this particular issue and discuss it in details after reading the handouts and the books that I've given to you on the course outline. But the point is that the president has an overwhelming influence in determining the composition of the Council of State. Previously, in a traditional political setting, as I said, no chief had a hand or has a hand in determining who becomes a member of the Council of Elders. But our president, I'm talking about president generically from 1992, they appoint some members of the Council of State, and then some too, they can influence their selection onto the Council of State. And what is worse is that their advice to the president is also not binding. And so they can give all manner of advice, they can speak their mind to the president, but the president is not bound to take the advice. And so you see the manifestation of winner takes all. The president has been elected, he has all the powers, but he gets to the level of Council of State and he takes over the control of the council too, by way of either directly appointing members or influencing the composition of the council by influencing those who get there as members of the Council of State. And the worst of all is that the advice is not binding on the president. You can advise him whether publicly or privately. Oftentimes we don't hear the Council of State advising in public, and of course they may not be required to do so. But the point is that whatever the advice is that they give to the president is not bound to follow that advice. And so some have even argued that it is important that we get to know what exactly the Council of State is doing, or the work that they do. Do they advise the president and the president doesn't take, or they don't even do that? So can we have a report of the activities of the Council of State, what they said to the president at what point in time, and what the president did in relation to the advice that was given to them, and all that? Can we also, as a solution to winner takes all politics, ensure that if we truly want to borrow from the traditional conception of Council of Elders, we make the Council of State truly independent? In that case, the advice should be binding on the president. In that case, their composition must not be determined by the president. The president should have no say in forming or determining the council of determining the members or selecting or appointing some members of the Council of State, because it doesn't help. That is not what was the case in the traditional, or that's not what is the case in the traditional political setting. We just went to borrow it, and then we have watered it down in a manner that does not give too much powers to members of the Council of State. And that's how come some people have advocated that the Council of State itself should be scrapped. I believe that if we truly borrowed it from our traditional conception of Council of Elders, then what we can do is not to scrap it, but to improve, build upon it, to give them more teeth to bite, so that, yes, these are eminent statesmen and women, even though our composition, in our composition, we have also tweaked our constitution such that even people who are toddlers can also become members of the Council of State. That is not what used to be the practice in a traditional setting. In the traditional setting, toddlers have no role or position in the Council of Elders. Yeah, but in our time, if you go contest an election in the region and the president does not influence it, or even the president decides to influence it, and you are a young toddler and you win, you've won and you become a member of the Council of State. And I'm of the view that these do not help. These contribute to promoting winner takes all politics, and these do not help us bring the best out of the presidents we elect. I've always said, a traditional adage, that he who is cutting a path does not know his back is crooked. And so you need very eminent people, eminent statesmen, people who have seen it all before, constituting the Council of State, and then being bold enough to advise the president, and without mincing words, and the president is obliged to listen. That is what used to happen in the traditional system, traditional political governance system. But unfortunately, we borrowed it to our fold, and then we said that, well, they can advise the president, but the president is not duty bound to listen to their advice. And then also, the president himself is appointing members to go. How do you appoint people to such an independent institution of state? It doesn't add up. It doesn't show that we are willing to be corrected when we err. It doesn't show that we are willing to create the space for countervailing authority to thrive or to exist. And so, this is how the lack of independent council of state promotes, manifests, or it's a manifest, becomes a manifestation of winner takes all politics. The president wins, takes all the largesse of power, but he gets the council of state and also takes over by way of appointment and by way of determining, influencing the selection of other members of the council of state coming from across the regions of the country. So I would pause here and look at the last manifestation of winner takes all politics.